And he will explore what it really takes to connect wine with a new generation of consumers. And after that, we lovely discuss about that. But the stage, first of all, is yours. Give it away with your keynote. Welcome, André Hueston Mack.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Is it on? Hello, hello. You guys can hear me? I lost my voice. Can everybody hear me? Thumbs up? Yeah? All right, great. I guess first and foremost, yeah, they got to turn it up a little bit. I've always wanted to say that like I was a rap star. Turn my mic up. Can you turn my mic up? I'm never really formal with this shit, so I'm gonna kind of be loose with it and kind of just kind of go with the flow. The wine industry really doesn't have a marketing problem in my opinion. It has a problem. It's not relevant, right? It's always been based on tradition. And they just turned my keynote off. I don't know why he turned it off. No, I definitely have a relevance problem. But the key is that I think for me, coming in and working in the wine industry, kind of working my way up, I was an outsider for quite some time. I got into wine by watching old episodes of Frasier, and yeah, trust me. And then 18 months later, I found myself working on the floor at one of the best restaurants in the world, a place called the French Laundry. And what I've always realized is that wine was never really marketed to me. But it wasn't that it wasn't marketed to me. It just wasn't relevant to me. It didn't speak to my language. It didn't speak my language. It didn't show up in the places that I was at, right? It didn't have the same language. I don't know what the fuck a gooseberry is. Like, raise your hand if you know what a gooseberry is.
Well, that's because gooseberries do not exist in America.
Okay, well, totally.
We in Germany do know what gooseberries are.
But you see, but that explains my point. The point is that it wasn't relevant to me, right? And when you invite diversity and you invite different people with different backgrounds, just because the food that they eat and the things that they drink all bring a different perspective to wine. And so the more that you open the table, the more open wine becomes, and the more inviting wine becomes. And so I think for me, the question wasn't about how you market wine better. It's more about how do you make wine relevant to everybody. And so I don't know. Where's the clicker? I don't know. See, you see what I'm saying? I don't do any of this. I don't do clickers. I don't do any of this. I'm gonna halfway through, I'm going to ditch this shit. But there is a relevance gap, right? And the whole idea is that the industry is based on expertise, hierarchy, prestige, but the new customer wants culture, they want identity, they want curiosity, they want accessibility, right? And I feel like when I want to, I'm going to just ditch this talk. Listen, younger consumers want to be invited to the table. Younger consumers, they want authenticity. They want story. They're curious about why this wine exists. Why do you make it who you are? And I think for me, it's always been about giving the customer or the guest, giving them the permission to trust their own feeling, right? Like for me, it's like you're an expert in your own taste. You don't need me to tell you as an expert what you're supposed to drink. It doesn't exist in any other field, right? You either like a cheeseburger or you don't. You either like Diet Coke or regular Coke or you don't. You don't need an expert to tell you what you like. You're an expert in your own taste. And the whole idea is that there's no right or wrong answer. You want, give the younger generation wants people to give them permission to explore. They want to be invited. There's no right or wrong answer. And the whole idea is it's not a race to the end to figure out the best wine. It's not about your soulmate. And I think as wine, we think about this is the wine that I want to drink for the rest of my life. And I always explain to people that your relationship with wine is not about monogamy at all, right? It's about trying everything and figuring out what you like. Younger consumers like wine as part of they pair it with situations. right? It's about, hey, I'm going to an oyster bake. These are the wines I want to do. I'm going to a barbecue. These are the wines I want to drink. It's situational. And I think because of tradition, a lot of times we tie this hierarchy to wine that wears an ascot. And I don't think that we really understand like where wine exists. And I think for me, I've always felt like you have to, I learned all the rules just so I could break the rules.
But you say the language the wine industry is speaking doesn't speak to you, doesn't speak to new consumers, maybe. But at some way, somehow, producers, sellers of wine have to communicate to their audience. What language should that be? What style should that be? What attitude should that be, in your opinion, then?
Well, in my opinion, it's about, it's less technical. Like, I feel like a wine tasting is about having fun and exploring. It's not an academic lesson. It's not an exam being later. Like, we expect everybody to come to our level instead of meeting everybody where they're at. And I think I did a really great job working with Bon Appetit. Sorry, my voice is cracking up here. Working with Bon Appetit, I don't expect everybody to learn what I've learned to understand what wine means, right? I'm willing to go to their level to talk about wine there, to get them to be excited, to want to learn more about wine. Because wine is not competing with wine. Wine is competing with everything else. Beer, cannabis, staying at home for dinner. Like, all of those things, wine is competing with. It's not the same anymore. And I think for me was just that it's always about an invitation and less about you need to know the Grand Crus to drink these wines to appreciate them. And I think, you know, I mean, you've seen it in a lot of different other fields. Some of the most auction off pieces of art aren't Rembrandts anymore. They're Banksy.
True
Right,
that. But
right.
how could a producer then argue his or her prices? We do want the wine industry, or we do want them to sell for a price that reflects the work that they have been, the effort in the wine, in the product. How is it possible then to communicate this effort without using a very technical or an academic language that doesn't include terroir, soil, exposure, etc.?
Well, I mean, I think you tell the story, the existence. You tell the history, right? But it's less about terroir. It's more about why you exist, why you make these wines, what make those wines special. But like, everybody's story is different. I can only tell you about my story, about how I conveyed my story to everyone else. You have to figure out on your own in a way of what feels authentic to you. But it's a history lesson told through the lens and the story of your family, of what makes you tick, right? And I feel like the reason why most people buy anything is the narrative, right? And, you know, it's this, I heard this thing the other day, which is like blew my mind in a way where it's like customers, guests, whatever, they rent your brand to tell a story about you. Think about that.
Speaking of your brand, maybe could we just, since we go off track a little bit here, maybe we can. I'm totally fine with that. Here we go with the flow.
I totally fucked everything up. We're totally off script. Yeah.
Maybe we can just. This is because I'm not sure if you are familiar with what brands you've created. I myself, for example, I love to sell your OPP. Which also is a very famous hip-hop song, but your wine is called Other People's Pinot.
Correct.
And it's a Pinot Noir, and it's a Pinot Gris.
Yep.
And it's a very nice Pinot Gris, because in Germany we always love to bash about Pinot Gris, but this one is quite a good one. Oregonia also, like with a blink of the eye, you know, you're playful, you play with the branding of,
Right.
because also the label does reflect a little bit the like classic labeling from French Bourgogne producers.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit more about?
I mean, I think where my story difference is that I didn't name the winery after myself. I didn't say Mack Estates. I didn't say André Mack. Because to me, as a consumer who got into wine by watching Frasier, I walk in the store, who the fuck is André Mack? Like, what is that? Whose name is that? That's about my legacy. But I think what resonated more for me was just a representation. You know, Orgonia, these were a playoff of Bourgogne, but this is where I learned about wine. The greatest wine list that I had a hand in building, they bookend on red and white Burgundy. And domestically, where I felt like, where domestically in the United States, where Pinot Noir and Chardonnay were well represented, and what I wanted to be a part of that story was Oregon. Free Gamay from the burgification of wine, you know, like Free Wheezy. Like, let Gamay be Gamay instead of this secondary Burgundy tier that you get overpriced for. In Sheep's Clothing, that's an ode to Mouton Rothschild trying to sue me. Are they here? Are they here? Maybe? Yeah, okay. And then knock on wood. I mean, to me, I feel like we all have to embrace our story and be authentic with our story. I was a kid who got into wine by watching old episodes of Frasier. I was raised on hip-hop and punk rock, and it felt easier for me to tell the story of how I saw wine than it was to say I was from wine, right? That was not authentic because I never came from a wine background. My parents never really drank anything outside of the occasional chair. And I think everybody should embrace their story, but it's not a history lesson. Everybody doesn't need to come to your level to appreciate what you do. Sometimes you have to meet them where they're at.
And yet you are, especially here, you're working with like the most elite grape varieties in the world, Pinot Noir,
Right.
Chardonnay,
Right.
well, not Pinot Gris maybe, but how do you bring that together, that you try to communicate in a very youthful or playful way, or to approach to consumers who do not like the elite way to consume about wine, but with the
No, you're
most the most sensitive and the grape varieties that are most complicated to communicate, because younger consumers like Primitivo with a little bit of RS and probably not Pinot Noir.
All right, so that is a big contradiction, obviously. And it comes with a lot of confidence. And I learned a lot by working in some of the elite restaurants in the world. Thomas Keller had a very great sense of humor. We had a dish on the menu called tongue-in-cheek, which was tongue-in-cheek. And it was just, for me, I always felt like the greatest foil to pretension is humor. And through humor, we can soften the landing. We could be a lot more playful. We could invite a lot more people in that way. People are willing to spend money, but it's how you approach them. And for me, Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, yes, very expensive. But to me, it was always about the approach.
So let's try to narrow it down, maybe for our audience who are mostly working in retail. What would you think, or what would you recommend if I have a retail store and a younger consumer or a not so much experienced consumer will walk into my store? What should I change, or how should I design my store to not make it intimidating, to not make it too academic, to make it inviting, like all the things that you want the industry to do? Can you give me like three, this, and this, and then it could work better?
Yeah, I guess first and foremost, like I think most wine people, sommeliers in general, we love to talk. Like, I'm going to talk all day today. You're going to have to cut me off. We did not remark that. No. We love to share information. And I think in wine shops, sometimes we need to have that nonverbal communication in the way of, maybe I don't need to talk to you in the store. In my own personal wine shop, we had, and I know this might strike people a certain way, we had QR codes for the top 5 wines that we had, and then special picks. And so somebody could be in the store, not really wanting to talk to anybody, but they could hit a QR code, and it could be a video or audio telling them about the wine in a way that, like, you want to have a place where they can get information, but they don't have to talk to you. And I learned this from, we had a sommelier selection in the wine list at Per Se and at the French Laundry. And as much as sommeliers like to talk, we understood that we could be intimidating coming to a table. So there was a kind of escape hatch in a lot of ways for people who wanted the information but were too afraid to ask for it. So the information existed on the wine list as a recommendation, but then also in a wine shop we had these QR codes where people could get the information that they wanted without having to speak to the clerk in the store. You know, I think for me, it's like most people, when you walk into a wine shop, it's having a friendly staff. Having a staff, most wine in America is consumed within 24 or 48 hours. So when you approach a customer in the store, it's more like, hey, sorry, are you having this for dinner tonight? It's being inquisitive, having a curious staff, inquiring to the guest or the customer about what's this wine being used for, right? Is it a special occasion? Are you having it tonight? Are you having it tomorrow night? What are you cooking? What are you looking for in general? What do you normally drink? I think just as a more inviting staff in a lot of those ways, but like knowing that like this wine is being purchased to be consumed within the next couple of hours, if not couple of days. And I think understanding that and you know, and knowing when to pull back and when to press forward. Always say hello, always say that you can help them. In our wine store, we had a long communal table. And to me, that represented being a sommelier. Like all the things happen around the table. Like I really had never worked in retail, but we wanted to convey the message of we wanted to be hands-on and tableside service in the same way that you would in a restaurant. I don't know if that helped anybody, but
Yeah, but to break it down, I mean, you say you do not to get a good price for a good wine. You do not need to like put out the very white ironed cloth on the table. It works without that.
well, no, absolutely. I think enthusiasm goes a long way. Being excited about a wine goes a long way, and I think you don't need to pull out the snake oil or any shit like that. It's like if you believe in the wines that you have on the shelf and you believe in the products that are there, then they will sell themselves based on how enthusiastic that you are about the wine. It's contagious. I don't think a lot of people understand that. It's contagious. If you're excited about what you're pouring or what's on the shelves, I think that's conveyed in a lot of ways. And you get to tell the story as a marketer, as a retailer. And the story gets to be told again as a producer.
I'd love to open for the audience to ask questions because I now ask a lot of questions. Thanks very much for answering them. Honestly, do we have specific questions from the audience?
Hold on, I need a refill.
This is just an ice request, but yeah, we now chill down the lemon zest. Oh, okay. We do some refill on stage. Good, I got it. But do we have something that goes beyond the content of the glass?
Got it. I'm just really, really impressed by your bottles and how accessible they are, and especially towards younger audiences or people who are interested in learning about wine, but are basically afraid, you know, with that barrier to entry. But I just wanted to ask you if there are other examples from other brands that you've been like super impressed by that have made their wines more accessible, that have like lessened the barrier to entry, or something somebody's doing in the wine world that is very impressive to you.
Great. Ask about the competitor. That's
Yeah.
obviously a good idea.
Well, I mean, what do they say? They say about great artists still, right? There's been a lot of inspiration, I think, for me, even from the lower end brands. I think one of the brands that I took a lot of inspiration from was Senequinon, SQN. Very expensive wine in America, California appellation, but the storytelling is what I understood. And I think for them, less was more, right? In that sense that it was California appellation wine. It's the most expensive California appellation wine in America. And so there was something about the way that Manfred Krenkel told a story that made sense. But it was also about the limiting of that information. If you knew, you knew, kind of thing, and that's what I felt like I embraced. Randall Graham, in a lot of ways, the way that he talked about wine and how he labeled wine, they were fantasy names. You never saw Randall's name on any bottle of wine. And I felt like, as an entrepreneur, maybe that was a way, an exit plan, in a way of being able to peel off a brand and sell a brand. Now, I'm passionate about what I do, but also I'm an entrepreneur, and this is a business. And I did want to sell a business and make money. But there's inspiration everywhere. And to be honest with you, for, last 12 years, I never really looked inside of the wine industry to get that inspiration. To think about that, right? Because I just felt like it was stagnant in a way that that wasn't relevant.
Do we have more questions? Yes, great.
Hi there.
Hi.
Talking about, I'm Charlotte from New Zealand Wine Growers.
Hey.
I like the sheep. I think they go well in our country. But a question about relevance and how we bring wine to people's lips, and those bottles look fairly staid, what we've always done, to reach new drinkers. Have you thought of smaller format, different format, bag and box, can? Has that been part of your thinking?
Correct. We explore all formats. We make a wine that's only in a half bottle called ProWein. It's Pinot Noir. So yeah, I mean, we've looked at all of those things, but also sometimes it's a curse when you arrive to a place early, but it's not early to the consumer. So I never did a canned wine because of that, right? I was early to the space. Lots of my friends were, but I didn't act upon that. Wine in a box, I am very active in that space. But also, I don't think that it's just packaging. I think packaging is one thing, but you actually have to show up in those places that people appreciate that packaging, right? The new marketing is culture. It's showing up in the places that actually receive and understand the marketing that you're putting out there. And so, so far and few between, you don't see wine in a lot of spaces that people are hungry to be invited to the table. Packaging is one of those, but the other part of that is showing up in the spaces that those people are at, right? Fouve Clicquot is great. They showed up to the polo field, right? That's a different type of marketing than, showing up to, a basketball game. If I look at examples of different things, one of the best places in all of New York City to drink wine is at a basketball arena. When you walk out courtside, there's a courtside sommelier. So they exist in places, but we're just not showing up in the right places. Or, you should show up in the places that resonate to you as a marketer.
Other questions? Otherwise, I'd love to wrap it up with the last question that just came to my mind. You do know that the wine industry can be quite a traditional game. What would be your recommendation? What would you recommend to younger or even older people working in the industry who have such bold ideas as you have to not go with the traditional way, that might be hesitant still because they fear maybe that a non-acceptance of the industry? How did the industry react to your ideas? How did you overcome maybe a fear, and what would you give to the people out there?
Well, I think the difference is that I worked in the industry. I worked at the highest level in the industry. So the whole idea was that, you had to learn all the rules to be able to break the rules. Right? So I think being self-aware, I understand that about me. Sometimes it's hard for people to hear my message because they haven't climbed the rungs of the ladder to do that. And I think for me, you have to believe in what you do. I went on the journey to learn from the best and at the tippy top. And from that gave me the confidence to say that I could do whatever I wanted to do. Right? And so that whole saying that, they all laugh at me because I'm different, and I all laugh at them because they're the same.
Well, I think there's nothing to add from my part. Very, very good closing words. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for sharing your insights. Thanks for bringing all those very fun, playful, and very tasty, please taste those wines in the glass.
What was the name of the German steakhouse? That's what I want to know.
Really, we'll talk about that later. Good.
Bye.
Thank you so much.